During World War II, rain wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a weapon. When the skies opened up, battlefields turned into rivers, trenches into swamps, and soldiers into half-frozen statues sinking into the mud. Tarps tore, canvas leaked, shelters collapsed under their own weight. But not everywhere. In some sectors, soldiers stayed dry, warm, and invisible through week-long storms. Their secret? It wasn't a new material. It was a method. From the fields of France to the frozen steppes of the Eastern Front, one of the greatest enemies of an army wasn't just the opposing force, it was water. Canvas covers sagged under rainfall, seams split. Once the fabric soaked through, the cold crept in instantly. Clothes rotted, boots filled with sludge, even rifles jammed with mud. And while most troops suffered in silence, a few observant engineers started experimenting, not with machines or metal, but with the very earth beneath their boots. They noticed something curious. When they built makeshift ovens or cooked shelters out of clay and ash, those crude structures stayed dry inside, even when it poured outside. The walls didn't just resist water, they used it. Moisture would swell the outer layer, sealing cracks naturally. When the sun returned, it hardened again, forming a shell tougher than any tarp. This discovery led to one of the most brilliant and forgotten field innovations of the war: the sealed earth roof method. The sealed earth method wasn't fancy. No factory-made gear. No chemicals. Just what soldiers had around them: clay, ash, fabric, and ingenuity. Here's how it worked. They'd start with a simple frame: bent green branches, willow or hazel rods forming a low arch or lean-to. Over this frame came the first layer: wet clay mixed with fine wood ash. The ash acted like a natural drying agent and filler, tightening the clay as it hardened and even giving it a bit of fire resistance. When that layer set slightly, they'd cover it with any available cloth, tent canvas, bedrolls, or even stitched-together uniforms. Then came the secret ingredient: melted wax or animal fat, brushed directly into the fabric until it soaked through completely. When cooled, it formed a flexible, waterproof skin. Finally, they packed another thin layer of clay mixed with straw and soil right on top. That top layer protected the waxed fabric from shrapnel, heat, and sunlight, and made the whole thing blend seamlessly into the landscape. It wasn't magic. It was physics and nature. The outer clay absorbed and spread moisture outward. The waxed cloth underneath blocked it from entering, and the air trapped between those layers acted like insulation. Water rolled off instead of soaking in. Heat stayed trapped inside, and even under days of bombardment or torrential rain, these shelters held firm. Soldiers who built them could sit dry and warm for days while nearby canvas tarps sagged into mud. British and German field engineers tested the design after the war and confirmed it could withstand 4 days of continuous rain without a single leak. When paired with simple trench drains, these bunkers stayed dry even in flood zones. It didn't just keep soldiers comfortable, it kept weapons, rations, and maps dry. In war, that could mean survival. Modern tarps, even today, rely on surface tension, a thin barrier that keeps water from soaking through. But once they're punctured, stretched, or aged, they fail instantly. The W3 system didn't resist nature, it worked with it. Each layer played a role. Clay absorbed impact, wax redirected water, soil insulated, and even when damaged, the structure could repair itself. The next rainfall would swell the clay and reseal tiny cracks. It was nature's own self-healing roof. The ash in the clay also neutralized acids from smoke and rain, preventing rot and odor. That mattered, especially for soldiers living underground for weeks. What's fascinating is that modern engineers now call this concept hydrodynamic layering. It combines hydrophobic, water-repelling, and hydrophilic, water-absorbing layers, a principle rediscovered decades later in sustainable architecture. Those WW2 soldiers were unknowingly ahead of their time. And here's the best part. The method still works today. If you ever need to build an off-grid or survival shelter, you can recreate it easily. Start with a strong frame made of green branches bent into an arch. Mix clay and fine ash at a ratio of about 4 parts clay to 1 part ash. Spread it evenly over the frame and let it stiffen slightly. Then apply your inner waterproof layer. Any durable fabric will do. Brush melted beeswax, candle wax, or even animal fat into the cloth until it's fully saturated. Lay that over your clay layer. Then finish with a final coat of clay mixed with straw or dry grass. Once it dries, you'll have a breathable, waterproof roof that sheds rain, traps heat, and lasts for months. Homesteaders and survivalists have adapted this exact design for root cellars, cabins, and even outdoor ovens. The physics are the same. Redirect moisture outward, trap warmth inside, and let your shelter breathe. It's not just functional, it's sustainable. No plastics, no synthetic coatings, just the chemistry of nature doing the work for you. In a strange way, wartime necessity predicted modern sustainability. Those engineers weren't thinking about eco-design or zero-waste building. They were thinking about staying alive. Yet what they built mirrors the same earth-building science used today in passive houses and natural architecture. A system that adapts to weather. When wet, it seals itself. When dry, it breathes and reflects heat. 80 years later, many of those old clay bunkers still hold their shape. Some even retain partial waterproofing. That's the real lesson here. It's not just a survival trick, it's a mindset. These soldiers didn't have hardware stores, plastic sheets, or weather apps. They had to understand materials, how the earth behaved, how moisture moved, how heat escaped. They didn't fight against nature. They cooperated with it. That's why their shelters lasted, and why their lessons still matter. So, the next time you see a photo of smiling soldiers inside a dry dugout while rain floods the trenches outside, remember, that wasn't luck. That was knowledge. The sealed earth method may have been born in desperation, but it was built on science, a perfect balance of necessity and nature. And maybe the smartest innovations aren't found in labs or factories, but buried in the mud, waiting to be rediscovered. If you love stories like this, where history meets survival, subscribe and share this with someone who appreciates real ingenuity. Because the best lessons from history aren't written in textbooks. They're built into the earth itself.